Hey friends, I am doing my March TBR today, followed by my February TBR craft wrap up. So stay tuned. I am excited for March. I have spring break to get tons of reading done. February was a little bit iffy. I didn't do as much reading as I would have liked, but I think I am hopeful going into March. I'm also doing the tropical readathon this year. I'm on Team Fantasy. I usually do this readathon every year. It happens twice, once in March, once in August. I think it's really well done. I like the prompts. I'm not sure that I will keep doing this twice a year. I might switch it to only once a year, but I am going to be letting you know how each book fits into that readathon and then my own readathon. February's theme for my own TBR was love. March's theme is floral. Prompt number 1 for me is flowers on the cover. It just makes sense. And I'm going to be picking up this beautiful book, If You Leave Me, by Crystal Hannah Kim. This is a, I think, historical fiction. It follows a woman who in her younger years had to choose between the love of her life and kind of her family and the war that was happening. And then you see her again years and years later. She's a wife, a mother, she's lived a full life, but she's kind of reflecting on the choices she made. It's not a typical book for me, but I do think it's just stunning. I got it from a book box a long time ago and never read it. So it fits my flowers on the cover, and for tropical readathon, it's a genre I don't normally read. Prompt number 2 for me is tea, floral tea. I'm gonna be picking up a Venom Dark and Sweet. This is book number 2 in a duology. I have the first book on my shelf and it has a beautiful cover. Again, I want to buy this book. I'm hoping I enjoy it. And it is a tea-focused book. It's about a girl whose mother gets poisoned by tea. The daughter becomes a tea mage herself. She has magic related to the tea, as do several others in the kingdom. And in book 1, she's trying to get a job as like the official tea master at the palace. And there's a competition that goes on with that. And also some betrayal that goes on with that. So book number 2 is the finale to that. I love a good duology and I am very hopeful for this one. So it counts as my tea prompt for me, and I'm going to count it as a comfort read for tropical readathon. Prompt number 3 for my TBR is wild, like wildflowers. And I'm going to go with Obsidio. This is part of the Illuminae Chronicles. I don't remember if it's the last one, to be honest, but it is wild because the texts in these go all over the page. They have a whole bunch of different like text types here. You get letters, you get emails, you get art that's written in textiles, you get pages that are blank, you get pages that are black. It's just a whole mix of writing, and I really loved the first 2 books. It follows kind of a space battle, and you're seeing it from 2 different characters from book 1 and book 2. I think book 3 these characters are going to meet and kind of come together. Not entirely sure, but I really enjoyed book 1 and book 2. So for tropical readathon, it is going to be multiple POV because you usually get about 4 different points of view in these books. Okay, prompt number 4 is fairy tale. I know that may not seem floral, but when I think fairy tales, I think of Beauty and the Beast. I think of Snow White, Aurora. There's always a floral gardeny aspect to the princesses. I think of even modern day like Nettle and Beau. I recently read Bryony and the Rose by T. Kingfisher, and it's all about gardening. I do relate fairy tales to a kind of garden floral feel. I am going to go for one of my classics that is on that list, and it is Magician. The first book is Apprentice, and I think this is part 1 of like, you can split it into 2 books or you can have it as one big omnibus. But this is an old school fantasy about a guy, someone named Pug, who I think is going to become the hero. It looks just like the most classic fantasy wizardy trope that you can find. So for tropical readathon, it's going to be under powerful artifact for the fantasy team. I don't know for sure that this has a powerful artifact, but the vibes it's giving is that it is going to hit every one of the typical fantasy genre like tropes, and powerful artifact has got to be one of them. Okay, every 5th book is my big book. I did not get to my big book in February. February is a short month. That's my excuse. But that means I'm gonna just carry over Knife of Dreams by Robert Jordan. This is book number 11 in Wheel of Time. I am nervous putting these on here every time because Wheel of Time can take me like 5 days to 15 days, depending on how my reading is going. So February, I ended up just not even picking it up because by the time I got to it, I would not have had enough time to finish. I knew it based on my reading. I'm hoping in March, it's spring break, will make this manageable, achievable. I'm excited. I don't want that to sound like I don't want to read these books because I love reading these books. I just have a hard time thinking about how many books I want to read and the time this takes me. But every time I start, that fear, the anxiety kind of goes away because it's such a good world to be a part of. For Tropical Readathon, this is going to count for multiple timelines. I think that's kind of a loose interpretation in my mind. It's gonna count. Okay, my next prompt is pair with a song. I'm not sure what song I'm gonna pair this with, but V.E. Schwab has a book called This Savage Song. It's gonna be audiobook for me. That's one of the Tropical Readathon prompts, is to read an audiobook. I've been loving V.E. Schwab. This one has to do with magic based on songs from what I understand. I haven't looked too much into it, but it is on my wish list and it's an author I feel like I trust at this point. So I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look up. Maybe there's like a playlist that goes with this book. We'll have to see. Okay, my next prompt is Cactus. I'm thinking of something a little bit prickly. One of my goals is to finish or continue reading the Chronicles of the Black Company. It is a very grimdark world with a lot of heavy magic and a lot of fun characters that just continue to kind of push and push and push despite the slog of being in this kind of endless war. I finished the first arc, which is a set of 3 books. The next book is Shadow Games, and almost every character in this series is a little bit like prickly. They're all grumpy, they're all tired, they're all just cranky. This series has some really good villains as well, so I feel like it fits the Cactus vibe. It also counts in Tropical Readathon as a book from a series. I'm gonna have to buy this book, I think, so I'm gonna probably order the next set of 3. They all come together, but just read the first one for this prompt, I think. Next, we have the Perfume prompts, a nice floral perfume. I'm gonna be listening to Their Vicious Games on audiobook. This also counts for a cover buy for Tropical Readathon because I don't actually know much about this book, but I saw the cover and put it on my audiobook wish list. And it has a perfume bottle on the front. So if I remember right, this has a school setting where one of the girls has been trying really hard to get a scholarship and something happens that is going to keep her from getting that scholarship. So the only other opportunity she has is to participate in this very mysterious challenge. I think there is known to be a little bit of danger surrounding these tasks from what I understand, but I don't really know what the stakes are going to be here, and I don't know if this is going to be a lighter or a darker story. We'll have to wait and see, but I do love a good school setting. Okay, I'm taking it a little bit easy on myself this one because for my colorful prompt, I am doing one of my kids' books. I gotta read these anyway, so I may as well give myself a little bit of a break. And this is Martians Don't Take Temperatures, the Bailey School Kids set. I have about 20 of these, and I think I've read about half of them at this point. It is something I used to love as a kid and would read to my students sometimes. This one specifically is about a school nurse who has big hair and that makes them believe that she might be a Martian. It counts for my colorful book and also multiple authors because this is written by Debbie Daidley and Marsha Thornton Jones. So they co-wrote, I think, the whole series together. Next up is my vlog. I've not got to this the first 2 months. So I went ahead and opened the book box just to see what the book is because I keep missing it. And it ended up with this beautiful cover called Lord of the Fly Fest. And it is about influencers who go to a fly fest and some secrets unveil themselves. I think people may even start dying. I'm not sure, but things are not going well for them is what it sounds like. And it ended up having, surprisingly, a very floral cover, which makes me feel like it's gonna happen this month. It's a good omen. And one of the prompts for Tropical Readathon is a bookish pun. So this has Lord of the Fly Fest. I count that as a bookish pun. So we'll see how I feel about this one. I just can't get over how intense this cover looks. For my uplifting prompt and Tropical Readathon's TV adaptation prompt, I'm gonna do another classic, and that is Black Beauty. I am worried because I don't know if this is going to be a happy animal story or a sad animal story, and I'm putting it in the uplifting category. So I'm hoping it is a happy animal story. I never read it and I never watched the movie. It's one that is well known. Like, I've heard about this book, but I don't know anything about it other than it's about a horse. I feel like I could really be setting myself up for some sadness here, but I'm gonna bank on it just being a uplifting, happy animal story. That's it for my own TBR prompts, but I do have some left over for a tropical readathon, so the chances of me getting to these next few are pretty slim. I'm gonna focus on my set first. So another prompt is choose between two. So I would be having someone choose between Gallants, another V.E. Schwab book that I recently got, and Under the Whispering Door, a book that was on my February TBR that I didn't get to. Both of these are by authors I love, and I had the potential to pick them up in either January or February and didn't get to. Another prompt is twins. I've been reading this series. The next book in the series I don't have, and it is called The Warlock. It is about two twins that have the power of the sun and the moon, and they are prophesized to kind of save the world, and fight against an evil force that's coming. But in book one of the twins has their powers awakened and one does not, so things kind of go awry. This has amazing mythology in it. Highly recommend for a good middle grade series if you're looking for one. Obviously, I haven't finished it, but every book I've read so far has been amazing. The last two I'm just going to mention because I don't actually know much about the books. One of the prompt is a banned book, and I was looking at a list and saw they both die at the end on one of the banned books list. I don't know really much about this other than what the title kind of hints at, but I've heard good things, and it's one I kind of had on my radar and just never picked up. So if I get to it, I would be reading that. And the fantasy team book is Unbounded, which I think is a 2024 release that's coming out. I've seen it on some people's looking forward to 2024 set of videos, but I don't remember what the book is about. So those would probably be the last two I pick up. Very unlikely that I get to them, but hey, you never know. Let me know what you're reading, and let's head on over into my TBR craft for February. All right, guys, let's look at February. Now, before I talk about my February reads, I did start the month off for the first few days finishing Hyperion, which wasn't for me. And I think 80% of it was just like the writing style is not my type of writing style. I liked the first few stories in it, but then they got a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more disjointed, and the ending of the first book is not an ending, it's a part one, which I didn't realize until way too late, so that messed a little bit with my satisfaction. It's also an older story, and there are certainly things that probably would not be written today. So yeah, not a big huge fan of Hyperion, unfortunately. I may give a more intense review, but I started off February, my number one read actually for this TBR was a love story, and I finished a series with Night of the Dragon. This is a third book in a series about a kitsune who's trying to protect a scroll and meets a guy that's working against her. She doesn't know it, but he's working against her, and he has a demon trapped in a sword. I think the third book was good. It wasn't necessarily my favorite of the three. The series overall is wonderful. Highly recommend it if you want something a little bit lighter. There are definitely dark moments in this, and there is love, but it's not over the top. I enjoyed this. It was light. It was beautiful characters. I think the ending, by the time I got to the end, it all kind of felt a little bit repetitive because it just like things just kept coming and getting in the way. And the next thing would get in the way and another thing would get in the way. But overall, I really enjoyed this series and would highly recommend it. I am not going to go in the order I read things. I'm going to do my big leaves first, my petals. I picked a pink flower for the month of February. I did not do as much reading as I had hoped, and I kind of jumped around a bit. So let's talk about what I did get through. I also had two DNFs, and this is the first one, Classic Love. I went with Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy, who wrote Far From the Maddening Cry, which I enjoyed. It wasn't like a top read for me, but I did enjoy it, so I was hopeful that I might enjoy Jude the Obscure. But I didn't read far enough into the synopsis, I think, to realize that he falls in love with his cousin while he's already married. And to be fair, his marriage is not a good one, and it happened out of naivety. But it just, I didn't really care. Like some classics that don't particularly work for me, it was a very reflective story. There was as much about the buildings in their town as there was about love. and I found myself just like not really reading as much, and I had got maybe 150 pages in and did not care about the relationship. And this is supposed to be about love, so I put it down, unfortunately. Next up, boyfriend pick. My boyfriend picked out a Warhammer book for me. This is The Infinite and the Divine. This has to do with two basically immortal characters that one of them has an artifact because he kind of collects things in a very almost grotesque museum, and another one wants the item because he feels like he can actually use it for what its designed purpose. And so they kind of start this age-long war that goes back and forth. The back and forth is very fun, and it leads to a lot, and I mean a lot of destruction. Oh, this is a small flower. It leads to a lot of destruction, and it inevitably they have to work together to kind of stop some of that destruction that they've brought on the world. The dynamic between the two characters in this book was hilarious. It was so sarcastic and just amazingly done. I would recommend this for people who have some knowledge of the Warhammer universe, because there's not a lot of description of those actual pieces of things. Like, it would say the destroyer dropped in, and so if you don't know those things in the Warhammer lore, it does not describe them for you. So there are definitely times where I was frustrated because there was this huge battle going on and it would name drop about 6 different things that I didn't know about, and it gave no description. So I either had to stop and look them up or just move on. This book is definitely worth it. And if you like Warhammer at all, 100% read this, because I enjoyed it despite not knowing any of the things about the universe, really. Okay, actually to a big one, sister love. My sister picked Persuasion, which I listened to on audiobook and really enjoyed. It's probably not my favorite of Jane Austen, but I enjoyed listening to it. It was definitely gave me that sense of love story that I was looking for this month. So then we had Enemies to Lover. This one I burned through. It was another audiobook, and I listened to A Court of Silver Flames, which is super smutty, and the last one so far that's out in that series. I really enjoyed it. I loved Nesta. I love Cassian. I love Nesta and Cassian together. It was just like, it was one that I knew I was going to enjoy and absolutely ended up enjoying. Why do I feel like I'm never sure about this? But I did have another DNF, and that came from Found Family. I started to read New World Ashes on my Kindle. It was the second book after New World Rising, which I have on my shelves, and I'm gonna keep. I really liked New World Rising. It was kind of from that dystopian era about a girl who lives outside of the utopia that has been built in like the slums surrounding it, and has survived all her life on her own, and then kind of comes to become part of a team against her will at first, but she realizes that they're out to help and they want to make a better world, and so she kind of joins up with them in book 1. Book 2, just I really struggled with. This is falling apart before my eyes. It started with torture, and the torture just was not, in my opinion, written very well. It was disjointed and not in the way you would assume like a character going through torture would be expressing it. It was just like bouncing back and forth, and then eventually you moved into kind of the PTSD side of that, and it was also just kind of rough. The whole thing felt very disjointed, again very repetitive in its writing, or in what the character was feeling and how often it was being brought up. They also had their torturer was a grandfather, and they just kept, every single time this person came into the room, they called him old man as an insult, and it just did not vibe for some reason. It really threw me out of the book, and I just kept getting thrown out of the reading. So again, I got about 150 pages in and did not finish. 2 big petals that I did not get to were Vlog, again unfortunately, and Cat Pick. Looking at some of the smaller petals, I did not get to Cover Love or Big Book. I'm so sad I didn't get to my big book, which would have been Wheel of Time. I got so close to reading it, but I had like 8 days left in the month, and there's no way I was going to read that in 8 days. I did have one just blank petals, so we'll throw that on there. And then the last one is going to be Author Love. Because I only had a few days left, I decided to pick up one of my smaller options. I had originally said this was going to be Night Watch by Terry Pratchett, because I do love Terry Pratchett. But again, that just felt too big, and I had like 5 days left at this point, 4 maybe. So I ended up instead picking up Gallant by V.E. Schwab, another author I've really enjoyed recently. And this was such a fun and interesting book. It was a haunted house, and I really had no idea what to expect, because the back cover is not very descriptive, and I really hadn't paid attention to anything other than the author. It really has some great artwork in it, and it has short pages, which made me confident that I could get through it in the small amount of time that we had. So I literally just finished it before filming this, and I really enjoyed it. Aside from A Court of Silver Flames, this was probably my next favorite book. It was so like slow and sad, but also just like triumphant, and you really get to root for the characters in this. If you like haunted house stuff, if you like ghosts and ghouls, especially in a middle grade-ish setting, this could be for you. There are definitely trigger warnings you need to look up for that, but overall it was so like somber and spooky in the best way. Let's put this last extra just leaf on here. Extra tape is needed. Here are the books I finished in February. I had 2 DNFs, unfortunately, and then 3 that ended up good. So I don't know what that means stat-wise, but let me know what you're reading in March. Let me know what your favorite February read was, and I'll see you later. Bye, friends.